This story takes place in an academy. There, Ian Precus is a regular student, enrolled in the Department of Swordsmanship 3rd year. Meanwhile, his friend Celine Haster is enrolled in the Department of Knights 2nd year. Then there's the third guy, Leto Einstern, who is also in the Department of Swordsmanship 3rd year. Being average academy students, the biggest worry for them is the usual stuff like low grades, exams, and all that student stress. To forget about all of it, Ian and his male friend rely on a little bit of booze. After having a good time with his friends, Ian heads back and falls asleep. As his slumber deepens, his mind drifts into the realm of dreams. There, he sees a battlefield littered with enemy corpses, and in the midst of it all stands a mysterious figure who oddly resembles Ian. The figure claims that Delphirem is coming and they must stop him. Ian finally wakes up when morning strikes. The name Delphirem lingers in his mind. He's heard this name in legends before. He decides not to think too much about it, and dismisses it as just a weird dream, because he drank too much the night before. That's when he suddenly notices a letter on his table that definitely wasn't there before. Another strange thing he notices is that the date on his calendar has changed. It's now 7 days ahead. He picks up the letter and starts reading it. From the handwriting, he can tell it's definitely written by a woman. Without even finishing the letter, Ian starts to imagine it's from some girl who has a crush on him. He might be late for class, but he's sure reading this letter will be worth it. However, after reading it, he realizes the only beautiful thing about it is the handwriting. While the sender did claim to be his fiancée, the contents of the letter are seemingly unusual. Everything written seems abstract. In the last page, he learns that the letter is from someone named Sophia, from the year 571 of the imperial calendar, on the 15th day of the month of the bow. The funny thing is that the dates on the letter don't match with the calendar, and another striking detail is the highlighted message at the end of the letter, which goes like, "If we don't protect the future, the world will perish." Annoyed, Ian crumbles the letter and tosses it into the trash, thinking it just a prank. As he walks through the crowd of students, he notices everyone is trying to avoid him, as if he's caught some contagious disease that only he can spread. They're murmuring under their breath and constantly giving him weird stares while keeping their distance. He also notices that, for some mysterious reason, he's now carrying an axe. Then he spots his friends, Leto and Celine. But even they quickly turn on their heels and start ignoring him. They act like they don't know him. Ian calls out to them, wondering if they can't see him or if they're just trying to ignore him. Leto suddenly begins to examine Ian closely. As far as Leto remembers, something about Ian was different just yesterday. Meanwhile, Ian has no idea why everyone is treating him so weirdly, and he wants answers. After a thorough examination, Leto wells up with tears of happiness and tries to hug Ian. Ian is even more lost now and demands clarification. That's when Celine reveals that Ian had been possessed by something strange the entire past week. This comes as a huge shock to Ian because, as far as he remembers, the last thing he did was say goodbye to both of them the previous night. So how in the world did an entire week pass? Upon hearing this, Celine realizes that Ian doesn't remember anything from the past week. They're annoyed because he's been treating them like servants this whole time, and now his reputation is ruined because of his awful behavior. They even considered taking him to an exorcist if he hadn't threatened them with an axe. Speaking of the axe, Ian curiously grabs it in his hands, completely confused about how it even ended up there. His friends quickly get hit with PTSD from the past week and just tell him to put the axe away. Meanwhile, all these brutal truth bombs start to weigh heavily on our boy. The fact that he was possessed by an evil spirit doesn't sit well with him. What makes it worse is that he doesn't recall being near any dangerous places or objects, so how could he have been possessed out of the blue? He starts to entertain the idea that it might be connected to that nightmare he had last night. His friends are relieved that whatever possessed him is finally gone, and thankfully it's gone before Ian could cause any more trouble than he already has. Hearing this, Ian curiously asks if he did something terrible. They agree that he did do some pretty terrible stuff. In fact, it was so crazy that he might not even be ready to hear it. He beat the second year's top student. Yes, you heard that right. Ian defeated the second year's top student, the very student hailed as the youngest aura expert. The same student who's been referred to as the monster swordswoman among the second years. Her name is Saria Yurdina. Ian is literally struggling to believe he beat that monster of a woman. As if that wasn't enough, Celine reveals that the defeat he handed her was so bad and humiliating that she had to be hospitalized for an entire week. Ian starts questioning what kind of evil spirit possessed his body to make that happen. Well, they're not sure either. But Celine reminds him that that's all in the past now, and they need to focus on the present. She asks him what he plans to do about his swordsmanship class today because, today, he's supposed to face that very monster woman once again. The scene then transitions to the recent past, where Syria can be seen struggling against Ian. He's staring her down with those deadly glares, slapping her hard across the face and sending her tumbling backwards. He follows up with another brutal attack. Bro is beating the hell out of her, disregarding any offensive misogyny. The students around them are in utter awe. As far as they can remember, Syria was virtually undefeated until this moment. Even the fourth-year students had a hard time defeating her, but Ian is handling her like it's nothing. Possessed Ian stands right in front of her, towering like the Sigma he has become. He finds it pathetic that, despite intentionally leaving openings for her, she falls for them and attacks without thinking. What's worse, she didn't even seem suspicious of the trap he had lured her into. In the present, Ian is dreading the fight ahead. Out of everyone, why does he have to fight Syria? It would have been fine if he were up against someone he could actually defeat. But now he's about to face the Academy's unbeatable student, Syria Yurdina. Celine suggests Ian call it quits while he still has the chance. Meanwhile, other students start egging Syria on, telling her to give her best. They recall how badly she lost before, but she's still determined to fight and won't let it go. The professor always covers for her because she's strong, which is why she's under so much peer pressure. She wants her name as the strongest swordswoman to keep flourishing. The teacher decides to commence the match, but before doing so, he reminds everyone that this match serves as a substitute for their class, and it will affect their grades. Well, that's not a good sign for our boy. While he had no problem getting defeated, the thought that this could affect his grade is enough to make him dread the whole thing. He curses the evil spirit that possessed him. Syria is a top student, so losing a few marks shouldn't hurt her, but if Ian fails this class, he'll end up living with his parents like a NEET, something he does not want in his life. As soon as the battle begins, that feisty lady launches an attack at him, and that single hit sets him flying through the air. He crashes down hard on the ground. Just this single attack is enough to make Ian realize that he's doomed. Even if he tries to keep the battle going, he's going to end up in the hospital. But still, Ian knows that if he gives up now, looking miserable, Syria will never acknowledge the battle and will demand more. So, he stands up, and as he jumps into the air to strike, he notices how much lighter his body feels, and his movements are much more precise. This only makes him curious about what could have happened to him when he was possessed. Meanwhile, Syria notices a weak spot in Ian's defense and knocks his sword out of his hand before it can even harm her. For a moment, Ian had thought that he might win this match after sensing that power boost, but it seems it was just wishful thinking. Syria, meanwhile, is curious to know if the weak spot in his defense was intentional, because last week Ian brushed her aside so effortlessly, like he was toying with her. He had always given her openings on purpose. Ian, on the other hand, is just pissed to hear all this crap about last week. His strange response only serves to irritate Syria, because it was his fault that she became a laughingstock, and he is still taking her lightly. So, out of frustration, she comes crashing down on him. But Ian is already prepared to block the attack. He can tell that both his kinetic vision and reaction speed have improved drastically. At this point, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that he can match her in this duel. As the battle continues, Ian adapts, keeping up with every attack she throws at him, though he's getting tired from her relentless assault. Meanwhile, Syria replays the words Ian had told her last week. Don't charge in just because you see an opening. Assume it's a trap. This is the very reason she wanted the duel, so she could prove herself. But to her, it seems like Ian is doing awful on purpose. So she charges at him again, determined not to relent unless he goes full out this time. Ian prepares to give her what she wants. Since his strength has definitely grown, he's confident he can take her down. But Syria is intentionally making a lot of unnecessary movements. The fact that possessed Ian told her not to fall for the openings has really got to her head. Their battle continues, and after a while, Ian decides to quit. He feels he's shown enough to satisfy her desire for a fight, but the little display of power Ian has showed only fuels her determination to fight even more. Now that Ian has gotten serious, she is also ready to show him what she can do. She leaps into the air and comes crashing down, and Ian ends up taking the hit. As he lies on the ground, the teacher starts the countdown. If Ian does not get up before countdown finishes, he'll lose automatically. Meanwhile, Syria is completely agitated that Ian took that hit on purpose, just to finish the battle. She makes it clear that she won't let it end like this. She's ready to request another duel if things go like this. Even if he refuses or skips class, she'll keep challenging him again and again. It will go on like this until she makes him taste the same humiliation of defeat she felt back then. Meanwhile, Ian is just annoyed by the fact that he has to deal with all this crap he doesn't even remember doing. He's not sure if she should treat him like some kind of arch nemesis just because he defeated her in a duel. In any case, he manages to get up before the countdown runs out. The teacher gives him the option to withdraw if he wants to. But Ian isn't willing to withdraw, so the teacher decides that the duel will continue. Syria is glad to see him make this wise decision, as it wouldn't have been appropriate to leave things unsettled like this. Ian gives her a sassy smile in response because, honestly, he's looking forward to settling this once and for all. In fact, he's fired up. He's eager to rip that shitty pride of hers to pieces, just like he did last week. Syria takes the opportunity to strike first, but Ian counters and literally grabs her sword with his bare hands, tossing it away. He then raises his own sword in order to finish the job. But before he can land that blow, he notices Syria trembling, seemingly vulnerable. This falters Ian, and he stops mid-attack, doubting whether what he was about to do is even okay. He's not sure why he's so worked up about this at all. Even if he humiliates her again by defeating her, it won't solve anything. The situation will just repeat itself. It's not about winning, it's about understanding the issue at hand. So, instead of continuing the attack, he flicks his finger and gives her a sweet poke on the head. Syria takes it the wrong way, beginning to think that Ian is trying to humiliate her after winning. But Ian questions why she's even trying so hard to win in the first place. In response, she says that winning is everything to her. If she loses, she'll just be a laughing stock. Ian tries to give her some motivational advice, reminding her that what others think isn't important. Losing one match won't change what people think of her that much. And no matter what others may say, the effort she's put into honing her swordsmanship won't disappear just like that. He acknowledges that being clowned by others just because of a defeat does hurt. He then shares the kind of pathetic life of defeat he's been carrying all this time, so he knows better than anyone that there's no point in taking others' selfish words to heart. Even if she loses once and others laugh at her, nothing will change. She does admit that she felt pathetic and started to believe that her swordsmanship is useless because she lost one duel. This encounter has taught her a lot, and for that, she's very grateful to Ian. Everyone in the crowd is utterly bewildered to see Syria finally concede defeat. This means that Ian has won twice against a top student. The teacher also announces Ian as the official winner of this match. Syria, on the other hand, is so motivated by Ian. She now wants to walk her own path, no matter what others say, just like Senior Ian taught her. After a few days, we see Ian once again getting weird stares from other students. It looks like he still needs to figure out how to handle the unwanted attention he's been getting. The students at the academy are still whispering and talking about him. They've now dubbed him a demon who not only defeated Syria in his first match, but also forced her to admit defeat. But Ian believes he hasn't earned this victory fairly. He only won because Syria didn't show what she's truly capable of. He didn't win because he's strong. While he admits that his aura detection and mana have drastically increased compared to before, it still does not change the fact that she is strong in her own regard. Though he is a bit curious what caused this little power-up he has gotten. He wants to know what happened in the past week that he can't seem to remember at all. His friends suddenly surround him, asking about his well-being. Well, he's good for the most part, but the only thing troubling him is what possessed him. His friends assure him that the saintess at the cathedral said he's fine, so they're sure that he's indeed fine. But Ian's not sure. With all the weird rumors circulating around the academy, he can't seem to feel good. But Celine believes that he should not give any attention to these stupid rumors. Not to mention the rumors aren't even bad. Before all this, he was looked down on as a low-ranking noble, but that's not the case now. It always pissed her off when they called him an unattractive runt. Furthermore, she's grateful that because of his antics, even the high-ranking nobles have stopped treating them badly, because they're scared Ian will crush them. Celine then brings up a fresh rumor circulating about him. Word has it that Syria has been following him around ever since that day. Ian then points his friend's attention to the other side, where they see Syria lurking behind a tree in a disguise that's too obvious. Celine is totally thrown off by the obvious disguise Syria is rocking with such confidence, as if it would fool anyone. Besides, why in the hell is she following Ian after getting her ass whooped twice by him? Ian reveals that it's been around 5 days since she started lurking around him, and he is not sure what he should do about her. His friends then tell him to go talk to her since she's been going crazy just to talk to him. Finally, he approaches her. He already knows she's been following him, so he asks if there's something she wants to get off her chest. He's willing to listen. The girl looks demure and innocent. She's surprised as well as panicked that Ian has been able to see through her disguise. Anyway, she gets to the point and, panicking, requests his guidance on how to get stronger. The first thing Ian notices is how polite she's become ever since their last duel. Anyway, he's not sure what he's supposed to teach her. If it's about morals, that's a different story, but there's nothing he can teach someone stronger than him. But more importantly, he's glad he finally got his normal life back, and he really doesn't want to get involved with her. So eventually he refuses her request, though he reminds her that she's already powerful enough. The reason he won twice against her wasn't because of his skills or anything like that. It was because she simply let her guard down. Honestly, the only reason he won was because of sheer luck. But Syria believes that luck is also a sort of skill. She insists once again. She doesn't mind if he can't do it for a long time, as it would be more than enough if he helps her until the hunting festival. The mention of the hunting festival catches Ian off guard, because that ridiculous letter he received also mentioned something about the hunting festival. There were a lot of accidents during the hunting festival that year. Emma, from the alchemy department, went to gather medicinal herbs when she was suddenly attacked by a mysterious monster and was found with her stomach ripped open. In that case, he decides to focus on the mission at hand, but before leaving, he lets her know that if she wants to get stronger, she should ask Professor Derek to teach her, not him. As he runs away, his friends ask where he's going all of a sudden, to which he claims that he just remembered something else that requires his utmost attention. While Ian doesn't believe anything written in that letter, the fact that his friends' names came up in it bothers him. Later, he finds Emma in the alchemy lab, and the reason he's visiting her is that he's sure she must have some answers about his situation. A few days later, we see Saria practicing swordsmanship under the guidance of Professor Derek. He commends her for her fluid motions and can tell she's improving. As long as she remains diligent, she'll be able to create a well-rounded aura by the time the hunting festival comes. He's also glad she reached out to him for guidance, which he finds rare. The meek girl excitedly reveals that it was Ian who suggested she seek Professor Derek's guidance, and she doesn't regret it at all. She then decides to leave, as it doesn't look like she can learn more than what Professor Derek has already taught her. As usual, her bluntness catches poor Derek off guard. By now, even he can tell she's literally devoid of any social skills. Until the next class then, she proceeds to leave. The teacher then suggests she doesn't need to rush, as he's sure she'll massacre the competition by a large margin. He then decides to give her a hint since it's her first hunting festival. He reminds her to familiarize herself with the terrain and monsters of the southern forest, where the hunting festival will be held. He's sure her upperclassmen have already started doing so. She then questions him if there are any stronger monsters in the southern forest, to which the teacher confirms that there are hardly any near the entrance. However, once she reaches halfway into the forest, she'll start seeing some very powerful monsters. In that case, she decides to try going deeper next time, though her teacher warns her not to go too deep on her own. Although students can take most of them down, there are records of terrible monsters appearing more frequently as the hunting festival approaches. We then learn about the origins of the gods. At the time of creation, the heavenly god Ars was born alongside light, and with darkness came the evil god Omelos. Together, the heavenly god and the flow of time created the universe, establishing the law that time flows from the past to the future. If this law were ever overturned, the world would be thrown into chaos. Thus, the heavenly god firmly preserved the order of time by placing several restrictions on it. If there is any being capable of defying this order, it would have to be an enemy of the heavenly god, someone immensely powerful, someone like Delphilm. We then cut to Emma, who is trying her best to make Ian understand this lore, but it's all just going way over this goofball's head. She's annoyed that he's not even putting in the effort to understand what she's explaining. He was the one who woke her up while she was sleeping after pulling an all-nighter and demanded an explanation. But now he's barely listening. Not only that, but he came in and slammed the door open after not seeing her for a whole month. This guy seriously needs to learn how to treat others. But he tells her to cut him some slack as they're friends. Well, she doesn't believe this one-sided relationship can be called a friendship. He only comes around when he needs something. While it's true that he woke her up, he is not sure if he deserves this much criticism. He apologizes once again, but he really wants her to explain it to him a little more simply. Since he's apologizing, she decides to be a little lenient and promises to tell him the gist of it one more time. In simpler words, if he wants to go against time, he'll need immense strength. And there's only one being in this world that has this much power, and that being is Delphilm, the servant of the evil god. If this is what she says, he concludes that the letter he received must have been sent by Delphilm. While she didn't mean it that way, but they can consider the possibility that the letter was indeed sent by Delphilm. But she's not sure how a mythical being they're not even sure exists could have done that. In this case, Ian believes the evil god might be behind this. But then again, they can't confirm its existence either. In any case, it's impossible to get a letter from the future, so he should go back to his room and make sure he doesn't tell anyone about this, as she fears others might laugh at him for his ridiculousness. Ian makes a mental note of how harsh Emma is being, treating him like an idiot just because she said something ridiculous. Then again, he must be just as crazy for believing that he actually received a letter from the future. Before he leaves, Emma hands him a set of potion bottles, revealing that they are presence-erasing drugs, her latest invention. She encourages him to test them out and see if they work. The goofball in Ian gets excited at the thought of such a lucrative product. He imagines himself becoming completely invisible after drinking the potion. However, Emma quickly bursts his bubble, explaining that the potion does not make him invisible, it merely suppresses his presence. In any case, Ian eagerly pops open a bottle and chugs it down, only to be met with an absolutely foul taste. The stench alone makes him gag. Emma, on the other hand, is exasperated. Watching him recklessly drink such a valuable potion without a second thought, she gives him a well-deserved scolding. Despite the reprimand, Ian decides to test if the potion works. He asks Emma to close her eyes and try to sense him while he hides. She complies, shutting her eyes right away. However, Ian is met with a shocking realization. He cannot sense himself at all. It is as if he has become a ghost, without a body or presence. Just as he begins to feel smug, thinking this ability will give him the upper hand in the upcoming hunting festival, Emma immediately pinpoints his location. His excitement vanishes as she sighs in disappointment, lamenting that all her efforts were wasted. The potion had successfully concealed his presence, but his lingering body odor gave him away. She grumbles about not having considered body odor during her testing. After all, everyone has a unique scent they cannot detect on themselves. It simply had not occurred to her when she tested the potion on herself. Ian decides to take his leave, as he only came to check on Emma's well-being. Before departing, he promises to test the second potion bottle in the forest and report back to her. He also warns her not to go into the forest alone until after the hunting festival. If she needs to collect herbs or other materials, she should call him to accompany her. Lately, the monsters in the forest have been behaving strangely. Taking advantage of Ian's willingness, Emma invites him to tag along, seeing a perfect opportunity to put him to good use. Ian is also eager to help, so he agrees to tag along whenever she wants. As dusk turns to night, Ian returns to his dormitory. Ever since he read those strange letters foretelling Emma's death, he has felt an obligation to warn her. He can only hope she heeds his warning and stays out of the forest. Suddenly, Leto storms into the room, furious that Ian deserted his friends and ran away without even telling the reason. Seeing his friend, Ian immediately suspects that Leto is behind the prank, the one who planted those ominous letters on his desk. He interrogates Leto, demanding to know why he would do something so ridiculous. Because of those letters, even Emma laughed at him. While friendly pranks are one thing, mentioning Emma's death so casually is in extremely poor taste. But Leto is genuinely bewildered, having no clue what Ian is talking about. Switching topics, Leto asks how Emma is doing, since Ian met her today. Ian reassures him that she is fine. However, the scene shifts to a chilling reality. Emma is not fine at all. She lies in the forest alone, her stomach brutally torn open. The next scene takes us to a cathedral, where Emma rests on a bed, undergoing healing from a saintess. Leto and Ian can also be seen, praying for their friend's recovery. The saintess explains that Emma was found at the forest's entrance. According to the scouts, it was likely a monster attack. Since monsters rarely appear in that area, Emma must have let her guard down. Fortunately, drinking a potion that made her appear dead after being wounded saved her life. Ian, however, firmly believes that the saintess's divine power is what truly saved Emma. But the saintess regretfully informs him that her powers are not all-powerful. If the cathedral were to receive a valuable offering, they could perform a miracle. Ian reminds her that Emma comes from a family of herbalists who do not have the resources for such an offering. The saintess clarifies that the offering is not about monetary value but rather the difficulty of obtaining it. Unfortunately, she advises them to prepare for the worst. She also reveals that Emma's father is on his way to see his daughter. She understands that it will be difficult for Ian to explain what happened, so she offers to handle it herself. He is free to return to the academy, but Ian refuses to leave. He was the last person to see Emma before the tragedy struck, and he is prepared to explain everything to her father. The saintess notices the remorse and regret weighing on Ian. So, she reassures him that he is not to blame for Emma's situation and wishes for his mental peace. Outside the infirmary, Leto throws a fit, questioning why a monster suddenly appeared at the forest's edge. If it had not, Emma would have been safe. At that moment, Emma's father arrives, tears streaming down his face. His disheveled appearance makes him look like a hobo straight coming out of the streets. Seeing Ian, he begs to see his daughter, but for sanitary reasons, even her father is not allowed in. Ian and Leto can do nothing but assure him that the priests are doing everything they can to save her. Ian then proceeds to offer the bottle of potion to the devastated father, the very bottle of potion Emma had given to him. He believes her father should be the one holding it. However, the meek father refuses to take it. Instead, he makes only one request of Ian. He wants them to save his daughter. This simple plea leaves Ian feeling deeply guilty. If he had taken the letter's warnings more seriously, he could have prevented this tragedy. He does not know if the letter is truly from the future or if what it says is entirely accurate. But he does know one thing. He cannot ignore it any longer. Determined, Ian resolves to find the person named Sepia, the one who sent the letter, and ensure that the events described never come to pass. The next day, he embarrasses himself when he asks Leto about a girl named Sepia. Leto bursts into laughter, teasing him for having a secret admirer. The idea that someone would fall for Ian is beyond his imagination. Ignoring the teasing, Ian insists that he just wants to ask her some questions. But Leto continues to poke fun, which earns him a well-placed punch. Moving on, Leto mentions that Sepia is the name of a flower. Ian is already aware of this, which is why he is unsure if the name is real or fake. Leto considers the possibility that it might be a nickname. Since flower-related names are common in the north, The sender might be from that region. The mention of the north reminds Ian of the Yurdina family. Leto promises to ask around, but if the person is from the north, he has one person in mind, Saria Yurdina, a girl who just so happens to be a fan of Ian. Ian suspects the same. After all, the only noble family he knows in the snowy north is the Yurdinas. Saria suddenly appears before Ian, offering him a pouch of gold as compensation for teaching her. Ian literally has no clue what compensation she means. She reminds him that she had once asked for his guidance and later realized it was rude of her not to offer something in return. Ian insists it was not rude at all and refuses such an excessive reward. He wonders why she is so desperate to train with him. Saria explains that she wants to learn from the one person she cannot defeat. But Ian reminds her that he doesn't have the ability to teach someone as talented as her. He believes she has the potential to rise even higher on her own. Saria acknowledges this, but she doesn't want to miss this year's hunting festival because she won't get another chance. The mention of the hunting festival reminds Ian of something crucial. The letter said that Sepia also participated in this year's hunting festival. Because of that, he finally decides to train with her. Internally, he believes that the hunting festival might be the key to finding out whether Saria is Sepia. Thus, he starts training with Saria, and while he hasn't yet figured out if she is truly Sepia, he has learned a few things about her. The first thing is that she has zero social skills. She has the nickname Rude Yurdina, but not because she intends to be rude, she's just terrible at interacting with others. The second thing is that Saria doesn't understand the concept of rest. Ian has heard that high-ranking nobles often train relentlessly, relying on healing potions to recover, and Saria is definitely one of them. At one point, Ian suffers a terrible bruise, yet she still insists on continuing the practice, arguing that it can be healed with a single potion. But Ian reminds her that potions may heal injuries, but they don't remove the tension and fatigue in his joints. That's why people pace themselves during training sessions. The other day, she mentioned that this year was her last chance. Curious, Ian asks what she meant by that, and what exactly is causing her distress. Saria reveals that there is someone in their fourth year whom she desperately wants to defeat. She's afraid that once they graduate, she won't get another chance to spar with them. But Ian reminds her that she can always ask for a spar even after they leave school. But Saria explains that the longer time passes, the less likely it is to happen. In her family, if a junior challenges the head of the family, they are exiled immediately. And since that fourth-year student is her sister, Delphine Yurdina, this hunting festival is her last chance. Delphine is her half-sister and the future head of the family once she graduates. That means Saria won't have another opportunity to fight her after graduation, because the only place where a direct bloodline and a subsidiary bloodline can compete equally is within the academy. Saria vividly remembers the memory of her defeat. Her sister had changed the rules and manipulated them to beat her. She was impressed that she could hold her own without acquiring any allies, even looking down on her. Her sister has the support of Yurdina, so she had no support of her own, and that became her downfall. Ian looks at her with his kind eyes, giving Saria the impression that maybe, just maybe, she could find an ally in him. She thinks she should be bold enough to ask him out. Forwarding to the next scene, there's the hunting festival, an event most beloved by Emperor Aedelus. It's one of the main events featured at the academy, a competition to determine the most capable hunter, the one who can take down the strongest magical beasts. These beasts reside in the southern forest, the main location for the event, and they're intentionally allowed to roam free for the purpose of the competition. Also, the mysterious messenger Sepia is supposed to take part in this festival. Then there's Saria, whose connections will strengthen with Ian during the festival. At least that is what the letters implied. He still doesn't get why it has to be him or why he's connected, keeping him in a pensive state. Celine hurries up to him in a rush, wanting to go together. She calls him an idiot out of nowhere, arguing that he obviously wouldn't want to team up with Saria after humiliating her. Even though Ian tells her that they reconciled, Celine finds it weird that Saria has been following him for the past few days. Ian thinks it's nothing more than her own curiosity, as Saria has stopped doing that. Celine finds it uncomfortable and irritating that he's simping for Saria to this extent. Bro squeezes her face like he's Gordon Ramsay making an idiot sandwich. Celine's speechless in embarrassment, before he casually asks if she changed her perfume. Still flustered, she tells him that it's the scent of her facial cleanser. Ian didn't actually care, he just wanted to change the subject. Dude is a gaslighter pro max. Anyway, Celine is curious to know if he's got any clue on the kind of exercises they'll be doing. Ian guesses that it'll be exploration in the forest for the most part. He's really hoping they don't encounter any magical beasts, and in a normal occurrence, that would be the case. However, according to the letter, a magical beast attack is destined to happen, and with the right reaction, he could prevent severe casualties. It's a short way of saying that many people could die if Ian fails to act. He's hell-bent on preventing that dark future at all costs, as he's the only person who knows about the warnings from the future to come. In the next scene, the instructor rallies up the students for an important announcement. He wants them to be aware of Emma's incident in the forest, putting her in the hospital. It's a strange occurrence for magical beasts to come up all the way to the entrance, where they've never been sighted before. The instructor wants them to be wary of an attack, and goes on to explain the second bad news. Since they're melee fighters, they'll face difficulty swinging swords around an abundance of trees. He wants them to stay sharp on their feet, as they're facing monsters who are used to their own territories. Even Ian remarks they'll be at a severe disadvantage. However, the instructor believes that any swordsman with the ability to materialize their aura could easily clear the forest without any trouble. He demonstrates his point, showcasing how even at a disadvantage, their blade will cut everything down. At the same time, that doesn't mean they're allowed to go crazy and ruin the environment. The environment will play a crucial role in determining the outcome of their fight, and for a swordsman, appropriate distance is critical. Their first exercise will be a practical one. The students will form pairs and then move freely during the exploration. He doesn't want them to venture to the center of the forest, and emphasizes that they should run back to safety if they feel endangered. The thing is, Ian knows that a large group of magical beasts will ambush them, which also means staying together in a large group of their own would be beneficial. But the thought of gathering people together in an event featuring pairs, that sounds difficult because no one would believe him. The only thing Ian can do is to inform the professor about the magical beasts right after their appearance. There's the chance that he'll be caught up in a battle, so our boy rejects Celine's advance and zooms right past Syria, inviting her to team up. Poor Celine freezes into non-existence. She took the L so hard. The exploration begins with Syria and Ian remaining in the safe area. No magical beast has appeared before them yet, which he remarks is a weird occurrence. Even Syria finds it strange, and she's even more capable at sensing magical beasts than him. Ian recommends taking a break, urging her not to lower her guard. They wait a while until the sun comes down. She's standing in front of him, looking all shy and curious. Syria has been meaning to ask. She wants to know why he asked her to team up. Ian casually states that they're friends and wonders if she doesn't see him the same way. Syria, blushing, questions if she should give him something in return for friendship. She's not used to gaining any friends, so she doesn't know how this goes. Ian is stumped when she offers him gold in return for his consideration. He clarifies that friendship is different from transactional relationships, and that friends are able to casually chat with each other without any payment. They're supposed to share things with each other. Understanding this, Syria wants to ask him a rude question. Ian experiences a surprise when she inquires if he's doing all of this for Emma's sake. After all, they ventured way deep into this forest. She wonders if this is supposed to be a vengeful act against the magical beasts. He doesn't clarify. In fact, Ian erupts in anger, his whole body trembling with the memories of his dear friend. Ian tells her that he's not in it for revenge but to locate the magic beasts. Syria, horrified, asks if this is also a part of friendship. He thinks it's just a natural thing, and he's curious how Syria would behave if he were attacked by a magic beast. A determined Syria revolts that she would immediately take the monster down. That's similar to what Ian feels at the moment. The isolated girl is slowly understanding the meaning of friendship with Ian's actions. He clarifies that he's not in a rush, or crazy enough to go in without any plan. That's why he's prioritizing their safety. Ian suddenly hears something and instructs Syria to focus. At first she doesn't feel anything at all, but then it hits her. Just up ahead, nearly a dozen magical beasts are glaring at them with ominous eyes. With a number this large, the rest of the students are in imminent danger. Assessing their options, she grips her blade to prepare an attack. But Ian recommends against that, believing that these monsters pose trouble if they take them head-on. He thinks the best course of action is to inform the professor. Preparing themselves, they make a run for it, the horde of monsters following them from behind. Blitzing full speed, Ian knows that the creature is chasing them, but they can get away from the distance they're at. It's only a matter of time before they reach the professor. Well, not until Syria creates a damsel in distress moment for our protagonist. Of course, she fell and twisted her injured ankle. She thinks she should be okay and agrees to be left behind for it. But Ian isn't going anywhere. He certainly didn't expect this outcome to play out. The monsters are narrowing the distance, and it's only a matter of time. Ian tells Syria to run, a ridiculous instruction especially since she created trouble for him. Ian wants her to keep the truth from her own friends. He dashes forward to confront the monsters. He knows the forest has grown silent, which means all the surrounding animals have already gone into hiding. Seizing the moment, Ian plans to ambush them using the presence-erasing vial. He drinks the liquid, remarking its filthy taste. The effects kick in, allowing him to navigate without worrying about the beasts trailing him. Unfortunately, it still doesn't eliminate his scent, so he blends in with the environmental scent by covering his body with soil and grass. With his scent masked, he fixes his intention on a good hiding spot. Preparing a trap, he lunges on top of a tree branch, prepared to face the bastards head-on. One of the creatures comes out of the shadows. The wolf's body exudes more powerful energy than an adult man. Without a doubt, he's facing a real demonic beast. It's currently confused because the scent it followed disappeared right at this exact spot. Using this as his only chance, our boy jumps the beast with incredible speed, preparing his blade and piercing its head. Unfortunately, he was only able to stab the monster because his aura is far too weak to actually pierce it. Ian exerts the full weight and force of his body, doing whatever it takes to stab his blade into the monster's skull. Luckily, he manages to achieve his goal, marking the first kill. With how difficult just one of the beasts were, Ian wonders how many will he be able to take down on his own. Instead of lamenting his chances, he focuses on the mission at hand. He has to protect Syria no matter the cost, which is why he's ready to kill every last one of the monsters. Finding his next target, Ian senses that there are more demonic beasts in the surrounding area. They're split up trying to look for him. At least 5 of them are just nearby. In this situation, he thinks it's best to kill quickly before one of them can alert the rest of the pack. Ian forces his way and stabs multiple wolves one after the other. In his arduous struggle, he gets caught off guard and receives a brutal bite from one of the beasts. Ian perseveres. He can't even scream in pain because it will alert the rest. Dealing the killing blow, Ian uses his axe for yet another stab. He's just defeated a group of demonic beasts thanks to his axe helping him out. His senses have experienced growth ever since his body was possessed. In fact, his entire body moves much faster now. The possession ended up a good thing for him, no matter the purpose of the spirit. Bro is out here being possessed by Annabelle or some shit. Ian is pretty certain he can take care of the magical beasts now. Back to the rest of the group, Celine is pissed that he teamed up with Syria instead of her. She even accuses them of dating in their little team pair. Yeah, about that. Syria arrives panicking, explaining what happened. Instructor Derek is stunned to hear that Ian stayed behind to face the monsters all on his own. He wants Syria to wait and bolts ahead to take care of the beasts. Syria collapses to her knees before falling unconscious, hoping Ian to be safe. Returning the perspective to our boy, he's hiding amongst the wolf corpses. One of them approaches their dead bodies, allowing Ian to ambush him with a blade to its neck. The creature is at once killed, but exhaustion is slowly getting to him. 2 more of these angry bastards have just arrived, and this time, he doesn't have any traps to ambush them with. Ian is exhausted, his body covered with the blood of the monsters he just slayed. He readies his axe, welcoming the challenge instead of backing down, his gold eyes radiating confidence. The 2 wolves jump him together, even faster than the other magical beasts he faced. Still, Ian has gotten used to their movement at this point. He thought it would be tough to take more than one of them in a fight, but right now, he thinks he's got a chance. Our boy goes for a double cross slash, hitting both creatures with an array of attacks. He wins yet again, vowing to kill every last one of these monsters. Ian's body is taking a hit, and he was pretty certain to have killed most of the creatures by now. However, he can clearly sense one more approach. This one, for some reason, isn't drawing near. He assumes that the creature must have prepared a trap for him, a smart little fellow. However, Ian doesn't intend to fight the creature if that's the case. Suddenly, a foul smell attracts his attention. The realization dawned on him. He could never forget this smell after all. It's the smell of alchemy that came from his classroom. Correcting himself, Ian believes it's the smell of the potion from Emma's workshop. His hands tremble to hold his blade. He slowly realizes that this bastard was the one responsible for attacking Emma. The magical beast still has a piece of Emma's robe stuck in its mouth. Pointing his blade at the creature, he demands the monster to come near and die. The magical beast throws the fabric on his blade, provoking Ian even more. The creature circles him, as if it is confident of its victory. It's as if it wants to slaughter Ian like he did with the other magical beasts. Of course, Ian isn't planning on quitting so easily. He understands that this guy is a high-ranking magical beast among the rest. One small mistake could be the end of him, so he tests his chances. But before he's able to make the first move, the wolf speedily dashes in, tackling Ian with a body slam and sending him crashing. Its speed is a clear problem, as it is difficult to react in time. The magical beast goes in for another attack. This time Ian counters by throwing his blade inside the beast's mouth. Using this as an opportunity for an opening, Ian lunges on his descent, prepared to hit the creature with his axe. The full swing of the axe strikes against the creature's body, but its skin is so thick that it sends the axe flying from the recoil. The magic beast goes on the offense, forcing Ian to block its attack and collect his axe. The creature leaps away, only having endured a small scratch on its nose. Ian's commentary is hilarious. He can't believe that this wolf fucker is doing backflips so casually. He even entertains the idea of sending this one to the circus. Ian notices that his blade shattered the wolf's teeth, which means biting him is out of the question now. Still, the wolf has more than enough attacks for him to worry about. Then, he's also got to worry about his own body's endurance. Another high-speed attack could be the end of him. Ian dodges again, forcing the wolf to use its claw. He ducks it, realizing that he's outclassed in stamina and speed in this fight. Ian forces a counter, but it's not enough to kill the creature, let alone pierce its skin. Things are looking bad. Really bad. He thinks it's only right to finish the monster while it's still cocky. Ian decides to use one last weapon up his sleeve, something he had been holding himself from using because of the risk involved. The wolf fires an enormous energy blast, shoving him to the tree. Ian's in a serious pinch. The magical beast is about to finish him off with its sharp claw. Ian is in a daze, but let's recap a few moments prior. He knows the monster is merely trying to play with its prey. It only ripped Emma's abdomen open to toy around. For a second, it seems like Ian's body is cut open by the wolf's claw. But that's not what happened at all. He anticipated this moment and plunged his blade at the right angle. Pretending to be weak, he could easily target the creature's guts, hitting him where it was weakest. Ian taunts the beast for thinking it could play with him so easily. And now, he's the one exacting revenge, slicing the creature's guts out instead. His blade powerfully slashes across the monster's body. The fight ends at last. The beast failed when it toyed with Ian, thinking that he would be just as weak as Emma. Its arrogance led to its gruesome death. Ian, in his anger, deals yet another blow in Emma's name, hoping for the monster to remember this pain well. Anyway, Instructor Derek is speedily rushing his way into the forest, hoping for Ian to be safe. He arrives right at the moment where Ian delivered his final blow. Just ahead, Derek is shocked to see the dead bodies of the monsters before him. He can sense Ian's presence nearby. Celine catches up with the professor along with the rest of the students. Unfortunately, Ian is nowhere to be found, causing them worry. Derek thinks they'll be able to uncover his location if they follow the path ahead. Finally, they come to discover Ian, sitting on the ground, using the wolf's dead body as a cushion. He's out here panting his heart out, mocking his friends for arriving a bit too late. His consciousness fades as he utters his teacher's name. The next thing he recalls is waking up in the temple. The saintess informed him what happened. His instructor carried him all the way back after his fight with the magical beasts. His recovery will take a while, but he's glad he didn't sustain serious injuries. He was able to avenge Emma by the end, but it still won't be enough to help his friend recover from her coma. Also, the magical beast he fought was a young and immature one for its size. If only it had been more mature, it never would have fooled around with Ian. His friend is upset that he's having to think about all the things in the hospital. Ian just wants the fool to leave, as he's nothing more than a patient right now. His friend thinks he's a moron for risking his damn life to protect Syria. Also, he had Emma's potion protecting him at the time. But his friend thinks a more useful approach would have been to allow Syria to drink the potion, and then make her hide on top of the tree. This would allow him to reach the professor in time, and nothing would be wasted. It's freaking hilarious because this is actually a solid plan, and our boy basically does an oopsie I forgot. Anyway, his friend is amazed that Syria's so close to him now. She was worried sick thinking about him near the temple. Ian wonders why she isn't just going inside the temple like any normal person would. Celine is next in line to pay him a visit. She tackles him with an embrace. The girl was worried sick for him. She bites his fingers for being stupid and prideful. Turns out that Ian has been given a reward for beating the magical beasts. It's a total of 70 gold. He holds his hand in pain, while Celine is out here acting like a cheap friend asking him to invite them for a good meal. Our boy is out here struggling in pain because she's clutching his injured hand. She wants to go to the restaurant specializing in magical beasts, serving the best drake meat all around. Ian thinks it's an incredibly selfish request when he's hurting like shit. Hearing that, Celine's face is reduced to disappointment. He apologizes while she continues to hug him. Her emotions take over as she sheds tears. She really thought he was a goner. Ian smiles, patting her head. He's not the type to bite the dust so easily. Dude is a persistent cockroach after all. Celine can't accept the fact that he's recklessly putting himself in extreme situations for no reason at all. Pointing out how Syria doesn't matter nearly as much as him, Ian counters, saying that he couldn't willingly let an innocent person die for his own safety. Celine finds him annoying. She openly confesses that he's single-handedly the most important person in the world to her. Oh dear God, that's the loudest I love you I have ever heard. And yet Ian still can't place a finger on what she means. They're both childhood friends, but it's mostly that. Okay, I know what you guys are thinking. This angle, that shot, this thing could have taken a very different turn very quickly. Celine begs him to take care of himself. She even grabs his damn hand, leaping on top of his body before holding his face in place. They're about to kiss when their friend cock-blocks the moment with his presence. It causes Celine to jump like a cat experiencing a shock. He doesn't feel half as bad for ruining their moment. Ian, on the other hand, he's out here feeling guilty. Celine has been nothing more than a younger sister to him, and Bro does not aspire to become Diddy's successor. His friend points to Ian, believing that he should take care of Celine if he's also going to strengthen his ties with Syria. Bro is out here giving him dating advice because of how many bitches Ian is getting all of a sudden. Leto is actually kind of right. It's really because of Ian that both Celine and Syria's relationship experienced a shift for the worse. Let's hop over to see Syria's point of view of how things went down. For her own mistake, someone else had to take charge. Ian fought for her, and even reminded her of the value of friendship. When her instructor rushed Ian to the temple, she feared for his life. Her actions nearly got him killed. A senior risked his life for her, and in the past, she wouldn't have been able to understand why. Syria's meditation was often interrupted by the man himself. Ian wanted to accompany her for something else. She admits that he's the first person who treated her nicely despite her troubles. He never said anything back even after her inconveniences. It's as if she does not feel afraid to be herself around him. That's why she's certain that she does not want to lose him. She understands a small fraction of what he felt when he took on those magic beasts for her. Just like that, she doesn't want to lose Ian either. After all, friends will do anything to protect their loved ones. Syria musters the courage to pay him a visit in the temple. He's the first person who became her friend. Shy as ever, Syria asks if he's feeling all right. He admits that he's recovering well, relieving her worries. Ian is glad that she came to accompany him, as he's growing sick of the boring book Leto handed him to study for the upcoming exam. Syria, feeling guilty, asks if he's angry at her. Sensing her guilt, Ian answers that there's nothing for him to be mad about. It makes her beam with happiness, something he didn't expect. He assures her that there's nothing for her to worry about. He was just doing it for another friend. Also, Ian inquires about the bag she's holding in her hands, afraid she might have brought some payment for friendship again. Syria corrects him, stating that it's the reward money for defeating the magical beasts. She was tasked with handing him the reward. Ian opens the bag, stunned to find so many gold coins inside. He knows for a fact that this sneaky girl added more gold of her own. Ian insists that she take the extra amount back, as the life of others can't be bought with gold. Syria feels shy when she shares skinship with his hands. As if matters couldn't be worse, Celine pops out of nowhere and catches the two. She turns sour the second she spots Syria, shoving past her to ask for an update on Ian's condition. Our boy is horrified with the way Celine treated Syria. Syria gets up, realizing that she should take her leave. Celine openly calls her a rude bitch for being the one who landed Ian in the hospital in the first place. To this, Ian shouts at her for being extremely rude. Celine, ignoring his feelings, casually swipes away his worries. All she's thinking about is what they should eat after he gets discharged. It reminds him of Leto's warning. Ian tries to confront Celine, who doesn't care at all, and only focuses on their date to come. Syria exits the temple, feeling depressed. Her gloomy and slumping posture is noted by the rest of the students. Some of them want to pick her off and crush her while she's vulnerable. They hate the fact that she's noted as the top student. News of her abandoning Ian has spread like wildfire. Some of the students agree to come together and crush her completely. They bring this matter to Teen, who believes they're being reckless for catching beef with the Yerdina family. Only a single mistake could be their undoing. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman who seems to know something about Syria Yerdina. Lupin thinks she's being arrogant, but Teen stops him to hear her out. He's willing to hear what she's got to say. The girl pulls off her cloak, revealing that Syria's birth is a point of contention. In fact, they don't have to worry about the Yerdina family fighting back at all. In the next scene, Ian is visiting his dear friend Emma, who is still knocked unconscious. It's his fault for failing to believe in the warnings of the letter. 2 events have already come into existence, which means there's a seriously high chance that the magical beasts will also appear at the hunting festival to come. And since the warning highlights the word monster, they're probably going up against an even stronger threat. Ian is frustrated that he will be powerless to stop the threat on his own. His only option will be to seek the instructor's help. The Saintess interrupts his thoughts, surprised to encounter him here for a visit. Ian asks about Emma's condition, and learns that she's still being kept alive. However, there aren't any promised chances of her recovery. Ian points back to their conversation. The Saintess once mentioned that Emma could be cured, so long as a valuable offering could be made. He wants to know what she meant. She clarifies that an object with high divinity would be required. In usual circumstances, the remains of magical beasts are used. But they're hard to obtain, and it would be even harder for her father to obtain them. Realizing that he's got a shot, Ian asks if a high-ranking magical beast would be enough for the job. But unfortunately, even that won't be enough. She thinks an adult specimen of the species might be enough. Ian is glad to hear that. The Saintess confirms that Emma is at the brink of experiencing a miracle, so maybe she will recover on her own. Ian goes away, wondering if the monster that he's destined to face at the festival will be powerful enough as an offering. But it's not like he can beat the creature or anything, especially since he was nearly killed in his last fight. His one and only hope is his professor. Ian's steps echoed near the faculty halls. He burst through a door, pardoning his intrusion. Professor Derek was pleased to see the rising star looking and feeling better after the incident. Finally, Ian raised his concern about magical beasts that are stronger than the wolves that are showing up. He asked if the professor would deal with the problem when it comes to it. Professor Derek seemed dodgy. His student just posed a complicated question. He personally believed that no magical beasts stronger than the wolves would show up any longer. Ian felt frustrated. It already happened in 2 separate incidents. It shouldn't be too crazy to think that it can happen again, right? Professor Derek argued that those were isolated incidents with an extremely small chance of occurrence. You see, magical beasts can appear in any area with a high concentration of unrefined magical energy. That's why the Empire oversees places that overlap with human presence. That way beasts can't spawn. The exception to that service is the Southern Forest. They leave that area alone for the sake of the hunting festival. The Empire keeps the beast population to a certain level while preventing strong ones from appearing. Ian posited that a particularly strong one might survive. Professor Derek disagreed. As far as he's aware, strong beasts love fighting, and their presence is strong. It's practically impossible for one to survive without being noticed. But if one manages to survive, it must be because of a special ability. Besides, the hunting festival is a grand stage where you can see who can hunt the strongest beasts. A single strong beast showing up shouldn't be a problem. Ian felt disillusioned by the professor's careless outlook. He asked if Derek doesn't care if he doesn't care if the students get injured or worse. The professor doubled down on his stance. The purpose of the tournament is to hone students, and professors aren't supposed to interfere with that. What's more, overcoming unfamiliar crises is also one of the tournament's objectives. Seeing that he won't be able to rely on the traditionalist professor if something dire happens, Ian has no choice but to handle this thing on his own. By lunchtime, we see Saria Yordina gracing the cafeteria with her unearthly presence. But the crowd of students no longer sees her as a threat. They see her as a punching bag to throw hurtful insults. They had stopped for a while, but the bullying started yet again. This time, the cretins are stepping out of line and hitting her where it hurts. They're hurling insults at her mother. The lack of one, to be more specific. Holding her lunch, Saria turned around to face the goons bothering her. They didn't seem intimidated or the least bit scared at all. Saria thought for a second and turned around. Whatever she wanted to do to them was not worth it. It's better to just ignore them and continue minding her own business. She can't waste energy on these people. The leader of the goons, Teen, took offense by being ignored. So, he rushed past her, deliberately bumping her from behind. With a forceful push, he made Saria tumble to her feet, dropping her lunch on the ground. As the plates shattered and the food was ruined, mocking laughter roared throughout the cafeteria. The young lady of Yordina family had never felt so frustrated and humiliated before. While she was experiencing Korean manhwa levels of bullying, our MC is practically beaming with a huge smile after having real meals instead of hospital food. Ian happened to pass by some students gossiping about what happened in the cafeteria. When he heard the Yordina family mentioned, his ears perked up to listen more. Some NPC nobles dismissed Saria's backing since they heard from someone else that her mother came from the lower class, making her a disgrace to the Yordinas. Unknowingly, the cocky NPC blurted that the only one who can defend Saria is that Ian Purkis guy. When cocky NPC turned around, the man he's been gossiping about appeared before his eyes. Ian just stood there menacingly, not uttering a word, while shooting a deadly glare at the gossiper. He demanded clarification on what the NPCs were talking about just now. Cocky Bullcut tried to change the subject, hoping to slither his way out of the situation. His goonmates had already left him alone with the big bad wolf. Ian held Bowcut's shoulders with threatening firmness, and the interrogation began. The devil has a lot of things he wants to ask. After extracting information from the pitiful NPC, Ian found himself in his next class, topology. All this stuff about areas and lines is not his strong suit at all. By his side, his buddy, Leto, took out a piece of parchment, hoping to cheer Ian up. It was an article regarding the Southern Forest magical beast repelling case. Ian Purkis, a third-year academy student, was credited for defeating multiple magical beasts in a harrowing incident. The article vividly described how he slaughtered 10 monsters, including one high-ranking one. It praised his achievements as nothing short of remarkable. Saria Yordina was mentioned, too. The top student of the swordsmanship department was lambasted for abandoning a friend in danger. Reading that part made Ian mental. She was the one who sent Saria off. She had just gone to get the professor. The praise and the harshness of the article gave him a headache. Leto reckoned that the writers wrote it that way since it sells better. Think about it. The arrogant Yordina runs away while a low-ranking noble defeats a high-ranking magical beast. It's a sensational story. There's no better gossip than that. Ian is worried that if he doesn't clarify things, horrible things might happen. Leto advises him to give it up since the princess of the ball, the one in charge of the paper, will never hear Ian out. She doesn't interact with poor people. That means changing the story is out of the question. Leto tried to convince him to just let it go and move on. Ian gets all the praise, while his new friend gets all the hate. It wouldn't be good for Saria. Compounded with the bad rumors about her spreading lately, It's looking worse and worse. Ian consulted with Leto about the cafeteria incident where Teen insulted Saria, giving the others the courage to pile on the harassment against the poor girl. Ian scolded a few gossip mongers earlier. Those NPCs won't be a problem. By the looks of it, the group looked like they were second years, given their brown capes. Teen's group of third-year students and now the second-year students are participating. Leto feels as though something more sinister is happening. With so much harassment going on, there's a high probability that a mastermind is coordinating everything behind the scenes. Someone who can stir up public opinion to sow hate. While Teen might be a delinquent from a violent kingdom in the south, he's never had a high opinion of Syria. A noble from a frontier can't have that much influence. Assuming that someone is manipulating everything from the shadows, that someone must have an information network wide enough to dig up dirt about Syria's lineage. With that in mind, Ian formulated a simple but effective place. First, he'll destroy Teen and his entourage, then we'll proceed from there. Ian scoured the entire campus in search of Syria. By sunset, he finally found her. He approached her with a smile and checked if she was okay. He failed to notice the miserable state she was in. When he finally caught a glimpse of what happened, Ian's blood boiled. The beautiful young lady has been smeared with a red liquid all over her hair and body. In her eyes were tears of defeat. Earlier, she tried to come back to the cafeteria to have a meal after her first one was ruined. On the way, she came across some other goons blatantly talking shit about her. Once they realized the weak insults weren't working, they brought up her lower-class mother once more. Not knowing when to stop, the goons theorized that she might even have a different father, or she was just picked up off the streets. Syria was pushed to her limits. She tried to put up with it, hoping the harassment would die down, but that clearly wouldn't be the case. Seeing the rage on her face, the goons excused that they were just talking about some girl from the lower class. It's not their fault if the words hit close to home for anyone else. Syria Yurdina finally snapped and rushed her way to the bench where the goons were sitting. Unfortunately for her, this was all part of an elaborate plan. A trap. As soon as she stepped into the hidden trigger, her feet were planted into the ground with dig magic. She tried to shift her center of gravity to her other foot, only to become more unstable with one more dig trap. Seeing her lose her footing, stumble, and fall made the goons laugh like hyenas. One of the goons took out a bottle of wine, uncorked that thing, and poured the contents on top of the trapped Syria's head. They literally doused her with alcohol, bro. With a fiendish look on his face, the jackass noble goon celebrated her humiliation. Syria tried to remain level-headed. Normally, it shouldn't be possible to use magic without incantations. These bastards must have prepared this trap and waited for her to come back the whole day. As a result, they really got her ass. At that time, she had already taken the bait, so she entertained the idea of fighting back, but ultimately held herself back. In the eyes of her family, her mother is a non-factor. If she acted violently, it would only complicate things further. Ian strongly argued that she was well within her rights to whoop some ass back there. But those bullies were smarter than they looked. They made a public apology, calling it an accident. As for the insults, they never directly mentioned Syria by name. Had she acted hastily, those bastards would have been able to talk their way out easily. On the contrary, Syria would have just caused trouble for her family. Either way it goes, the young lady loses. Seeing, hearing, and feeling what she has to endure moved Ian. After a few minutes of emotional release, Syria wiped her tears away and thanked Ian for lending her an ear. No matter how many times she insisted that she was fine, Ian refused to let the matter go. She might be okay with keeping the status quo, considering what she has to lose, but Ian Purkis is not built like that. He's ready to be on demon time. He's not fine with this shit at all. The third years usually loiter around the back of the academy for their shady shenanigans. The goon that wind up Syria bragged to Teen that the girl couldn't even dodge his basic magic and tripped. It sounds like the idea of pouring wine on her was Teen's idea. They called it a luxurious shower she could never afford. Their little fucked-up meeting was interrupted by the arrival of Ian Purkis. Without missing a beat, he confronted them about where the rumors about Syria's private life came from. The goons just laughed at him for playing the role of knight in shining armor. Seeing that these kids weren't taking him seriously, Ian jumped in with his knuckles, ready to be delivered. One punch was all it took to crash one of the goons to the ground. They looked at him incredulously. They can't believe that a low-ranking noble would dare lay their hands on a proper aristocratic noble. Before any of the goons could draw their weapons, Ian had already taken down one arrogant young master with a swift swing. He sent the guy tumbling to a random alley corner. From behind, one of the goons tried to punch him in a blind spot. Ian quickly responded by sending that sneaky bastard into the air. 2 down and more to go. He hasn't even broken a sweat yet. He never expected these arrogant pricks to spill everything right away anyway. He might as well have a little fun. He can just beat these kids up as much as possible until they're on their knees apologizing. Seeing as they're all holding swords, it seems like Ian had taken care of the only magic user in the group. Teen is the only troublesome opponent left. He's a legitimate top student in the third-year sword department. Besting him would be tough. But there's no point in stressing over details now. Ian is locked in against whoever stands in his way. The goons finally decided to use their small brains and attacked in unison with each other. Seeing their movement, Ian smiled. Confident with his drastic improvement in terms of skill, he felt assured that dealing with some arrogant young masters shouldn't be a problem. Instead of waiting for them to enter his range, he rushed forward to bring the fight to them. Ian's sword was light and powerful, extremely tough to guard against. The first unfortunate soul he attacked tried to hold his ground but slowly lost by sheer force. With one massive swing, he knocked the enemy's blade away while nearly beheading the bastard. With one more down, there are just 2 more to go. Suddenly, Ian felt a sudden pang of pain in his back. Turning around, he saw the other goons attacking him from the rear. With a coordinated effort, the two took to the skies and aimed for a single target. Ian was forced to be on the defensive end, making sure to stop the 2 swords from ripping him apart. He gritted his teeth, hoping that he could outmuscle 2 people at once. With perfect timing, he managed to sneak in another slash to drive the goons away. Upon creating some space between them, Ian slashed once more with passion. It landed on a goon's temple, factory resetting that fool. Like a wild animal, Ian pressed the attack on the last trash mob left in the way. He sped up barehanded only to sneakily pull out the mysterious hatchet hidden underneath his uniform. As soon as the coddled NPC noble felt his bloodlust and incoming harm, the bastard was cooked. After a minute of close calls, the trash mobs were cleared. Now the only one left is their boss, the infamous Teen Atri. While drawing his great sword, Teen asked how Ian managed to improve his skills so greatly in such a short time. He mockingly asked if Ian received some miracle Yurdina drug when the 2 of them were training every morning. The sly bastard even knows his training with Syria. Teen has been spying on them upon catching his attention. Ian won against the Yurdina twice. It's only natural that Teen felt a bit threatened. He charged his massive blade with a flickering aura of light. When it comes to pure speed, he was in a completely different league. The weight behind that great sword pushed Ian a few paces back. Teen wasn't done yet. Seeing that he's got the upper hand, he pressed further. With one swift upward slash, he nearly cut Ian down. Teen laughed. By the looks of it, he was worried for nothing. Ian's skills might have improved, but his magic hasn't. Ian knew how true that was better than anyone. Even if he can read and react to Teen's moves, that guy's potent magic sword is too much. Still, Ian has to find a way to win somehow. With his inferior magic power, Ian is no match against this bastard in a head-to-head match. Every movement and attack just steer the pendulum more and more toward Teen's supremacy. His wild light aura was equally destructive and quick. Defending against such heavy attacks is slowly taking its toll on Ian. No matter what he tries, he just can't seem to bridge the gap between them. Teen praised him for his toughness. It's not every day that he gets to fight an opponent who can last this long. Unfortunately for Ian, he can't just win by running around. Even though he was clearly on the back foot, he still had the energy to promise that Teen's damned mouth would be shut after they were done. Teen claimed that if Ian could really do that, he would admit his defeat like a man. You see, the men of the fierce Southern Kingdom are willing to bear the consequences of a fair duel. It's pretty rich coming from some asshole harassing Syria just because he can't beat her in a fair match. Excitedly, Teen charged forward, seemingly aiming for a kill shot. Ian focused and read the trajectory of the swing coming from above, but it turned out to be an effective feint. The magic great sword flashed like lightning and hit Ian from the side. The slash knocked the wind out of his sails. Ian was brought down to his ass. He had never fought someone with such lightning-fast speed. Teen chose this moment to ask Ian about something that's been bothering him during Ian's first fight against Syria. At that time, Teen saw him dodge an attack that was supposedly unavoidable. It was as if Ian bent reality itself for a quick moment. Teen must be yapping about the time he got possessed by that mysterious evil spirit. Logically speaking, only a master should be able to use spatial steps. Speaking of steps, Ian noticed that the ground in the area felt particularly soft. Surveying the ground, it was full of indentations gouged up from the fight earlier. Something clicked, and he finally figured out his only shot of winning. While he was having his breakthrough moment, Teen increased the intensity while seeking more information regarding Ian's bizarre technique. He looked like a berserker surrounded by lightning, but Ian kept on dodging with his clumsy movement. After getting out of Teen's massive attack range, Ian sheathed his sword back to its scabbard. Teen saw this and took it as an admission of defeat. He thinks Ian has given up, but our boy is just biding his time and waiting for the right timing. Like the inexperienced magic swordsman that he is, Teen took the bait and charged forth. After taking a few fast-paced steps, his feet dug into the soft ground. Taking the terrain into account, Ian calculated the precise angle to dodge without wasted movement. Teen slashed nothing but air. Vulnerable, he looked at Ian and saw a brutal eye staring him down while wielding a hatchet. Finally, Ian landed his first clean hit of the fight and it shook Teen to the core. The attack landing significantly affected the arrogant young master's confidence. He tried to recover and reclaim the momentum, but he was a tad bit too slow. Ian Purkis blitzed him down to the ground, preventing him from even lifting his great sword. Ian savagely grabbed hold of the snotty noble's neck, putting him in a nasty chokehold. He demanded silence while raising the hatchet up, its dull side aimed at Teen's pretty boy face. He promised that he would shut this guy's trap earlier, and it's time to do just that. Teen was confused. He'd never encountered this kind of savagery in his life. Ian continuously pummeled his face with the dull end of the hatchet, beating him up with dull pains until he passed out from the pain. Ian's anger for the dirty bastards who dared to mess with Saria flared up. Scum like this, who shits on somebody behind their back, deserves everything painful. Someone like this spoiled noble needs to be smashed to a pulp to learn a lesson. By the time he was done with Teen, the handsome young master of the Southern Kingdom was barely clinging to life. Suddenly, the first goon Ian dealt with woke up to continue his posturing about being superior and all that BS. He claimed to be Lupin, the third son of the Empire's Count Raynella. While the arrogant rant continues, Ian simply sends his hatchet flying inches away from the brat's face. All that yapping and all Ian gathered was that there was another shit brain trying to get their head smashed to a pulp once more. At least now that one of the goons is awake, he'll have someone to properly interrogate about Saria's personal information getting leaked. Lupin finally realized that his words had no meaning here, and immediately snitched about the green-haired girl who told them about Saria's home life. They have no idea who that girl is or what her angle is, but that striking green hair stands out. Lupin swore that they had learned everything about Saria's mother from that mysterious girl, and he didn't know anything else. He swore that this was all he had, hoping that Ian wouldn't brutally knock him to the dirt like the others. It might not be much, but Ian still has a clue. In any case, he urged Lupin to carve this event into his skull. Next time there won't be any warnings. After dealing with the delinquent third years, Saria should regain some sort of normalcy in her life again. Now that bastards know that if they try something nasty again, some crazy lunatic will hunt them to the ends of the world. And for the scumbag who's spreading the word about Saria's past, Ian vowed to find and crush them. A day later, the students of the swordsmanship department honed their skills by sparring with one another in class. While everyone was focused on their spars, Saria could not help but worry about Ian. She feels that he might have acted out of anger yesterday. She doesn't want that. No matter what happens, she doesn't want to drag someone she cares about in her own issues. Her thoughts were disrupted by yet another disrespectful dig at her. Some girls called her an orphan and laughed at her face when she glared at them. Instead of feeling fear and standing down, the witches continued harassing Saria. They mocked her, saying that she couldn't even cry to her mommy if she wanted to. For the past few days, she's been taking every blow to the chin. She doesn't want to cause trouble for her family, but a person can only endure for so long. With a sword in hand, she struggled to control herself lest she let go and slaughter these talentless NPCs. Seeing the ferocious look in her eyes, the witches continued to add fuel to the fire. They jest that if she attacks, that must be because of improper upbringing. The two would have continued hurling hurtful insults if it hadn't been for a surprising and commanding voice telling them to stop. Behind them appeared Teen Atri. His face was full of bandages covering up all the injuries that Ian had inflicted. He told the witches to back off and leave if they didn't want to end up like him. The witches immediately folded upon seeing a top student exuding pressure. The girls tried to excuse their way out of trouble, but Teen refused to let them go. He's familiar with their game. He used the same strategies after all. He announced that Ian Purkis gave him the business without giving them a chance to explain themselves. His whole squad showed up with various injuries and unsightly wounds, striking fear into every student's heart. The witches trembled, thinking that they might suffer the same fate. Teen and his entire beaten entourage walked up to Saria with solemn expressions. Surprisingly, the entire gang bowed down to Saria and apologized for their immature actions. Teen promised to never bother her again. Saria was taken aback. These boys could have spared themselves the embarrassment and done this privately, yet they chose the most public apology there is, making the matter a bigger deal than it should be. Teen slyly looked up and explained that they were deliberately making a big scene out of this shit. If vague rumors were to spread around, his group would be the ones getting mocked for getting trashed. It's better to leave an impression that Ian is just a crazy and powerful swordsman that'll fuck everyone up. To be completely honest, Teen still doesn't like Saria. He finds her rude, but what's more annoying is the gap in skill between them, not to mention powerful backers. However, he's willing to recognize that finding good allies is also a skill in this world. Before taking his leave, Teen urged Saria to tell Ian about this apology so he could get the lunatic off his back for good. Saria thought Teen was just a cruel brute, but he's a lot cleverer than she thought. Once the third-year delinquents exited, the two witches who were trying to get under Saria's skin followed suit and bowed with an apology, swearing to never mock her ever again. Syria thought of a world where she was alone. She would have simply kept enduring the mockery and cruelty, thinking there was nothing she could do but take it all in. She was glad that Ian had helped her out. She also recognized that she couldn't keep relying on his help for her issues. She steeled her resolve to handle things properly on her own next time. While classes are still ongoing in the rest of the academy, Mr. Ian Purkis is spending his time in the infirmary. The Saintess was not pleased with him becoming a regular in the infirmary at all. More importantly, she heard that this kid beat up 8 people yesterday. Saintess is at her wit's end. She helped Ian out because of his reasons, but if it weren't for them, the Ranellas would have made a big deal out of everything. Ian cannot understand a single thing she is implying. He asked who the Ranellas were, and she answered that they were a Count family. That bastard Lupin was their 3rd son. While it seems like Lupin complied, Ian made a mental note to keep tabs on the kid, just in case he's scheming something for revenge. Still, he might have moved too hastily yesterday. He didn't consider bigger noble families exercising pressure on his family. Thankfully, after hearing his side of the story, the Saintess took his side. She firmly believes that the heavens protect the righteous. There's also the favor she owed her from last time. Hearing the mention of favor confused him again. The Saintess gauged that he might not remember what he did that time and asserted that it was no big deal. Another puzzling thing was the name she called Ian by Emmanuel. Once he was left alone, Ian quietly deliberated. The Saintess must be talking about the time when he was possessed by that damned evil spirit. Perhaps it's time to figure out what the hell he was up to that week. The Saintess is a seraphic being that he never would have met outside the academy by normal means. There must be something more she is hiding. Just how big of a favor she owed the evil spirit to go out of her way to heal him time and time again. Ian's solitude was short-lived. The door creaked open, and Celine craned her face inside, her expression lighting up as soon as she saw Ian's face. She immediately jumped to his lap while checking on his injuries. The injuries that she's aggravating by being so energetically charged. Then she flipped into jealous mode, asking Ian why he cared so much about that rude Yerdina bitch. He simply shut her annoying rant down by saying that she would have done the same thing for Celine. He promised to protect her after all. Knowing that he remembered a silly promise from years ago calmed Celine down. Ian is not the type to forget those kinds of promises, but he's the type to get possessed by an evil spirit and blackout for a week. He remembered how the high-ranking nobles set their eyes on her family's territory. As a part of their scheme, the nobles targeted Celine's uncle. When Ian saw her, his best friend, crying in the flower garden, he decided that he would protect her from everything the world throws their way. Hearing his reassuring words, Celine wrapped her arms around Ian, clinging to him tightly. Of course, Ian, the airhead, had to ruin the mood by telling her that she's like a little sister he wants to protect. Celine's fantasy crumbled upon hearing that she was nothing more than a little sis. Annoyed, she stepped on Ian's toes with force. She violently lectured her about the sanctity of the intimate moment he just ruined. Being the airhead that he is, Ian doesn't even know what he said or did wrong. Celine finally gave up. There's just no point in explaining feelings to an idiot like this guy. Changing the subject, she jumped on board to deal with the Yerdina issue as soon as possible. If they can resolve that thing, she thinks Ian's interest in the girl should fade. The bad-mouthing part isn't new for Syria, but now people are saying mean things to her out in the open and even in front of her. It's not even limited to people holding a grudge against her. Most of the harassers have never even had a real connection with her. Most of the culprits are high-ranking nobles with fairly large networks. Leto laid it out the same way. Ian asked if Celine had any idea as to who was running the show from the shadows. All they can do is narrow down the suspect list. First, it can't be a second year. They're more of an army of bullies without a figurehead. It seemed like Teen's group of third-year students was leading the charge. They weren't the masterminds. That would leave the first and fourth years. It's simple to rule out the first years since they have hardly any contact with Syria. By process of elimination, there's a high chance that the main culprit is a fourth-year student. At this time, Leto's wide nobility network would be perfect to conduct an investigation. They are looking for a fourth-year student who's a high-ranking noble. There's also that green-haired source that Lupin mentioned. Those parameters narrow down the selection by quite a bit. All that's left to do is find and punish the mastermind.